Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Golden Girls, Season 1, Episodes 5 through 7. So, going, of course, into these episodes, really still a fun show. I really like it. We, of course, are to kind of minimize the cast within these episodes, but it makes a lot of sense. Because when really looking at it, it's like, hey, the fewer people that you can pay, but the further the show is to just kind of go on and still be this success of a thing, justifying 7 seasons for it. So with that said, yeah, just some kind of real enjoyable episodes. We, of course, in episode 5 have a love triangle going on, it seems, where we kind of have Dorothy that is kind of really just kind of naive of the fact of what is really going on in this episode, and we have Dorothy who kind of believes so strongly that that kind of Blanche in this episode is kind of telling her some fibberies, let's just say. And so in episode 6 we go on and of course have it where Blanche's grandson David, of course, is arriving, and of course Blanche is going on and talking about her daughter named Janet, that of course this son is to spurn from. And so there's some kind of interesting kind of approaches of this episode that we go on and find out that kind of David is going through some rough times, some rough patches. And episode 7, we of course go on and have this fun little episode of, like, that's being a bowling episode, oddly. And we have it where it seems that there is to be this kind of story all held together by these twins and this man, and like you never actually see them ever in the episode, which I just kind of thought was funny. I'm like, so they're going on and on and on about these Nelson twins, and they're never actually in the episode anywhere. And I'm like, man, would that have been great for them to have actually had these characters, which they've talked about through bulk of this episode, actually be on the show somehow. But I guess it is with this I guess it is what it is with this episode, with just trying to figure out a way to masterfully, craftingly put characters into a story without them actually being there. And that's kind of the interesting thing about this show, is we continue to kind of very creatively write these episodes to where you still minimize as much people that are to be on the show as possible. And I'm like, man, when really thinking about it, when you go further and further on to a number of shows, how, like, big, massive of a cast that these shows would go on to eventually have. But like, we had the Golden Girls that is trying to figure out how to just, like, okay, let's kind of add this character, let's add this one person, let's kind of have this, like, group of guys that are kind of doing this in this episode, but just still trying to focus on trying to minimize the cast in the show was just kind of very clever. So, going on into this episode, let's double 5 this bad boy up, because it's about that time to go into spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this episode. Let's go further into the deep dive of this episode. Or these episodes, I should say. So, Season 1, Episode 5, we of course have a doctor weirdly going on and doing house calls, because it seems that Sophia is to get a regular checkup done. I'm like, why would they go on and have a house call being done for a normal checkup? And honestly, this doctor, who's to be Elliot Clayton, really doesn't go on and do much. Like, and I just thought that was funny. I'm like, why is this doctor even here? I don't really get it. So we go on and have Dorothy and the girls just kind of welcoming this doctor in, Ellie Clayton, who I guess is new to town, and we end up finding out also that this doctor is to also have a wife that was to have passed away. So this doctor is going on and just not really doing much with Sophia, the patient of which that he has. He's kind of going around, kind of just talking to other people that are in the room, while Sophia is just kind of having a thermometer in her mouth, and that's all that the doctor really does because he's like, temperature's normal. Okay, I'm leaving. As we go on, we have Dorothy that's telling like her own mother like what all like the issues that she has, high blood pressure and all this and that, and Sophia's like, hey, I can talk for myself. So so we have Dorothy going on and like trying to get with this doctor, and all of a sudden Blanche is to kind of make her way as she normally is. Like I think she's ending up doing a change of clothing so she can show off this new dress that she got. So Dorothy is all of a sudden kind of like zooming right to Blanche and telling her like, "Hey, this one's mine. Like I know you. Like this one, mine. Goodbye." so so Dorothy, of course, to ask this doctor out. And so we, of course, have this doctor that's okay, like, we'll go out sometime soon. So, like, I think it's like 8 o'clock or something like that. So Dorothy's like, great! Because, of course, we have to remember that Dorothy is, like, divorced, so she wants to kind of get a new man in her life. And, like, that's really great. Because I don't know how many times we have to go on and kind of see... like we've kind of seen like either Rose with somebody or we've kind of seen Blanche with somebody at some points. So now it's kind of time for Dorothy to eventually also get to be with somebody. And it seems that Sophia will eventually be with somebody later down the road in these episodes. So we go on and have Dorothy that is having a heck of a time with this with Dr. Clayton. And so we have the one point where Clayton is picking Dorothy up, and so all of a sudden we have Blanche who's offering this doctor like, hey, would you like a drink before you go? And I'm like, who's driving? So this doctor is to mention that he wants something sweet and he doesn't mean the drink. It's like, ha 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 ha. Yeah, because now that this doctor has gone on and had like one kind of woman, he's kind of looking to do a little bit of a taste testing, I guess, of other women. So we have Clayton that goes on and is to try and woo over Blanche, and Blanche is just like, like no, like you're with my friend Dorothy, no. So Dorothy and the doctor go go on. So Blanche is now talking to Rose, and she's like, oh my god, like, this guy just made a pass at me. Should I tell Dorothy? Maybe I shouldn't tell her anything. And Rose is like, no, like, you should go on, and you should tell her what happened. So, I don't know why I'm so jazzed about this, but it is what it is. So, Blanche goes on when Dorothy is to make her way back home. And so Blanche goes on and she's trying to say, like, Dr. Clayton did Dr. Clayton, and Dorothy, and so Dorothy's like, what did he do? Like, what? Tell me. So Blanche finally gets out that the doctor had made a pass at her, and Dorothy's like, no, like, I can't believe you're telling me this, Blanche. You're lying to me. How could you go on and do this? Like, you're just trying to get this man for your own self. And so, like, Dorothy's going on and, like, slamming Blanche and calling her anything under the sun. Uh, and so now we have it where both Blanche and both Dorothy are now at this um, this real hefty argument between one another. So to the point where this argument is getting so severe that it seems that Dorothy's gonna want to leave this home and make it on her own because this argument is so severe. So we go on and we have Rose, who's trying to kind of be the referee between these two, and Rose is going on and telling him, it's like, well, hey, how about you confront Clayton about it and see what he says, like, see what happens, see if he tells you the truth. And they're like, and Dorothy's like, no, because I believe my man, so on and so forth. Yeah, like, there's a lot of times when you would go on and you would try to tell somebody the truth about somebody, and they would go on and be like, oh, I believe my man. It's like, well, okay, well, like, why do I have reason to lie to you? Like, I have no skin in this game to not go on and, like, tell you the truth. But okay, like, hey, if you just, like, want to go on and you want to just think that everything is all perfect and whatever, and when eventually your man is going to step out on you, like, wow, what a massive surprise. What a massive surprise, sadly enough. So, it's being honest. So, we go on into this story, and so Dorothy, when Clayton is to come to the door, Dorothy is to confront Clayton about this. And so Dorothy is asking Clayton, Dr. Clayton, the whole name and nothing but the name, so help him name. Dorothy confronts this guy, this doctor, and we of course have the doctor is like, oh no, none of that ever happened. I'm like, oh my god. Like, you know what? I think Dorothy would have respected this guy a little bit more if he would have just, like, you know what, like, I had a moment of weakness. Like, Dorothy, like, we weren't really, we didn't, like, I didn't feel like we were at a place where we were at this, like, concrete relationship. And, like, I thought I was just a man that was just kind of going on and just on the prowl. I wasn't sure where things were, but no, we had this guy just lie about it. So, like, he could have came clean and just be like, well, I didn't know where we were or where this relationship was heading. I wasn't sure. Like, there's sometimes where, like, confusion can get easily cleared up. Mistakes could be made, but, like, because it was, like, the first date, right? So, but anyways, so Clayton lies about it, and so now Dorothy and Blanche are just so in upheaval. If good word, no, it's not. So they're still both mad at one another that Dorothy is gonna leave this house forever. Because I'm sure if 7 Seasons tells you that, that Dorothy is gonna leave this house forever. So Dorothy leaves this house forever, and now we're only left with 3 women. No. So what ends up happening is Rose, Betty White, decides, like, well, I'm going to figure this out for myself. Like, I'm going to figure out what really happened. And so Rose is to go on while Clayton is to arrive to this place again to be calling for Dorothy. we have Rose who's kind of like throwing herself at like this doctor. She's kind of like kind of moving in a way. She's kind of like using her feminine wiles, I guess is what we could say here, to like sway this doctor. And so this doctor is going on of like, no, I'm sorry, Rose. Like I just can't take your advances right now. Like I just can't go on, and like I'm with Dorothy right now. And Rose is going on. It's like, well, like you hit on Blanche before, and the doctor is like, well, yeah, but that was like that was a mistake. And all of a sudden, Dorothy out of the shadows, just lurking in the shadows at night, is to just plop down and be like, oh, so you did hit on her. Ah, well, you know what? Like, you were going on and lying to me, and like I think that I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to do anything with you anymore. Like, just cut it to the quick, frickin' with Dorothy. She's like, no, like you made me just like hurt my best friend. So no, goodbye. Goodbye, dear sir. Actually, he's not a dear or a sir, but he is what it is. So we have this doctor leave, and so now Dorothy technically has to go on and eat some crow, and is to really apologize to Blanche for all of this rigmarole, which leads all three of these girls to just kind of hug it out. Even Rose, that really didn't have much going on as far as but she technically helped, so she deserved this kind of like group hug that they kind of do. So I thought that was kind of a fun episode. That was kind of a fun thromp. So in episode 6, we of course, like I said, are to have a kid being delivered, a grandson delivered, named David. And so the one thing that I immediately want to question is, was this the same kid that had been a baby in episodes prior? Because if it wasn't, then I'm like, man, this kid grows up really quickly. Because they said it's like the mother is to be Janet, and I'm like, okay, is that the same daughter from episodes before, or is that a different daughter? We'll never know, because I'm not going to go back and just kind of double check and whatever. I'm just not. But I just have to throw that question out there, and if somebody corrects me, I'm like, okay, problem solved. So, because who knows, maybe people will watch this and comment, or maybe they won't. But hey, either way, I really do appreciate anybody watching these. So we have David that arrives, and of course, David is being this rebellious kid. And I'm like, yeah, of course. So we have David who is to be arriving on this plane. And so we have this kind of funny moment where Rose is making this big, lavish meal that, of course, I guess she had made for her son before. And she starts rattling all this stuff off. And I guess Rose would make that before this kid headed off somewhere. And Dorothy is saying to Rose, it's like, oh my God, like, where was this son of yours heading off to? Like, the electric chair? Just like, okay, like, that's a pretty good joke. It's like, man, like, you're basically serving him up his, like, last meal. Like, it's like a Thanksgiving style amount of food. So we of course have David that arrives, and this is Blanche's grandson. And so here's the one question that I immediately have about this guy's shirt, David's shirt. Is his shirt like backwards? Does that not look like a backwards shirt to you? Like, as if they had to figure out some way of just like, hey, yeah, like, can you just wear like a number of these backwards shirts? that weirdly just has this like logo like right at the top of this like shirt. Like to me, this does not look like an actual shirt that isn't reversed. Just the way that the like the collar goes, it just looks weird. Um, and plus, also, this guy has to not only wear like a shirt, but then he also has to wear like a shirt, kind of like a buttoned up shirt underneath this. Like it's either he's wearing a jean jacket or he's. I'm like, isn't it hot there? Like, is it like this kid? Like, kind of from what he's wearing, like it just feels like it's winter time. At some points in this film, it just doesn't make sense. But he's just being this rebellious kid, and I always have to nitpick about freaking like clothing choices where it's just like wait a minute, like this kid is like wearing some really like hefty clothing, and like you have these big like these big lights and whatever, but anyways, that are to eventually, I'm sure, have people sweat to death. Anyways, pushing on. So we have David that comes into the fold here, and we now have it where Dorothy is sleeping with her mother, Sophia, and man, is there some pretty good banter coming between both of them. Because we, of course, have Sophia is like, I don't want to sleep with you, Dorothy. It's like you snore horribly. And Dorothy's like, I don't snore. And so we go on and have these two characters that are sleeping together. And so we have them both sleeping, and like Dorothy is trying to study for this French exam, and she wants to get an A because like she won't accept anything less. So since when, I'm like, wait a minute, like so Dorothy goes on from being a teacher at some point to now going to school herself. Huh? Like that just kind of like it just seems kind of like a random thing where we're kind of just transitioning these characters to just kind of like, oh, like she was a teacher but now she's being taught herself at some point. So Dorothy is going and trying to do this this kind of note taking like thing. And Sophia's going on of like, hey, you're writing on that pencil too hard. So Dorothy goes on and she's like, really? Like a pencil? Really? What is it, like nails on the chalkboard? So Dorothy goes on and she's like, you know what? Like, I give up. Like, there's only so much studying I can do. And also, it feels like she's not really going to get this studying done. There's just too much going on. So we also have it where we have Sophia that is kind of putting a number of things upon her hands, and she's kind of doing some tweezing, and she's going on and just kind of doing a number of things, just kind of adjust herself for her going to bed. And Dorothy's like, hey, what are you doing? And Sophia's like, living. Like, what do you expect? So Dorothy goes into bed with her mother, and we of course have Dorothy asking Sophia, it's like, hey, what's that smell? And Sophia is going on mentioning that she has like Vicks on her chest, she has a number of other things, and Sophia is wanting to like put all this stuff on, and if Dorothy wants her to take all this stuff off, then eventually she'll be hurting in the morning. So we also have Sophia that's accusing Dorothy of possibly having some kind of flu or some kind of cold. And so we have like this whole night where it's just like these two are just kind of curmudgeon about sleeping with one another. And so but Dorothy's kind of telling us about a story where at one point Dorothy was to be afraid at night, and so I guess Dorothy would have nightmares, so she would go into her mother's bed and kind of sleep with her just to get some comfort. So we go on and we have these two characters just kind of having this bedtime, and all of a sudden we have at one point where David had come back with a number of guys that are all just listening to music at 2 in the morning and eating pizza. So Dorothy goes on and she's like, "Hey, what's going on in my house?" So we of course have it where Dorothy's kind of dealing with David, and so David is like, "Well, hey, I couldn't sleep, so like I brought a bunch of guys back here," and because immediately when David arrives, like David goes like right to leaving, where he's like, "Hey, yeah, I'm gonna go and go to this arcade, or I'm gonna go and meet these guys, or I'm gonna go and do this," and so it's like, for a guy who's supposed to be visiting, he's never really here. So we have it where like these group of girls are all getting David and these young men out of their place and telling David to go to bed. So really this continues to just kind of escalate where David is like, "Well, hey, what should I really be doing here?" Like just kind of like watching you girls just kind of God, what did he say? He said something about uh like he says something about like their bodies or something like that, or it's like where so we have it at one point where David is just kind of being so like rebellious and whatever, because like we have kind of polar opposite characters here. So we have Sophia who goes on eventually slaps David in the face, and so David runs off, and so we go on and we have it where the real problem here is that Sophia had slapped David, and if anybody should really be like slapping David, it honestly should be Blanche instead of Sophia. It's kind of like backseat grandparenting, I guess. So we have Blanche going on and speaking with David to find out that David has been having problems with his parents because they've been arguing consistently, to where it seems that like his parents has no or David's parents has no time for David because they're just too focused upon yelling at one another, and so possibly his parents are probably never really home. So after Blanche is to find that out, she's like, "Oh my god!" So all of a sudden Blanche is to go on with the girls and kind of tell them the truth about like maybe why David is being so rebellious, so like the way that he is. And they're like, "Well, hey, like maybe we should go on and give him like some kind of structure. Maybe we should kind of like tell him what to do. We should go on and try to like give him some like chores." I'm like, man, if that's like for a visiting person, like the one thing that somebody doesn't want to do is clean stuff up. Um, I don't get it. So, but like, so we have Blanche who's going on. I'm like, well, yeah, like if I give this guy like so much to do, like he's really probably gonna hate me now. So we all of a sudden go on and have David, who I guess is to do these chores, and he does them without arguing. So we have David that it seems that things are going so well that he wants to move in with these girls full time. And like we go on and we have this group that's kind of taking this and is like, "Oh my god, like we can't have him just be here. Like he has to go back with his parents and work things out or something." So we all of a sudden have Blanche who's kind of calling up Janet, and she's like, "Well, hey, like uh things here with me and David are going so well. I think I'm thinking about adopting him and raising him myself." And so Blanche is kind of yelling with Janet, and then she kind of just hangs up the phone. And so Blanche's reasoning for wanting to have David here is maybe she can go on and do good with David, like she couldn't do with Janet, and maybe kind of uh, like correct, uh, like if you want to go and like psychologically think this out, like try to break the cycle of eventually David going on and having kids, and then him ending up treating his kids like his mother and father were treating him. So, like, trying to break the cycle. So, it seems that what happens at the end of this is we have Janet uh, and her husband wanting to come here and pick, of course, David up, but we never actually see David's parents. So we go on and have David, who's like, well, yeah, I guess my parents are here. I guess I'm gonna have to leave. Like, I'm sorry, and whatever. And so David goes on and leaves and hugs everybody and goes off. And so, like, yeah, pretty decent, pretty fun episode. Uh, like we have like always like some kind of really fun jokes that comes out of every one of these episodes. So into the sixth or the seventh episode. So episode 7, of course, is to introduce a past lover of Sophia, but also this is to be some bowling competition because we go on and in this story we have it where Rose is just continuing to like trade partners with a number of people to try to get like the best bowler that she can go on and find, because evidently Rose is to be uh, some real competitor, and so it seems like she was to have a problem at school in her past, to just kind of like kind of reflect on, um, to have us really realize that Rose is really competitive at sports. So we go on in this story and we find out these Nelson twins. One of them I think is Sonia, and one of them I think is like Olga or something like that. So we have these Nelson girls, and I guess they would go on and they had finally just split up over a guy named Lars. And so we have these characters now going on and kind of picking and choosing, because these girls are really good bowlers separately. So Rose is going on and turning on Blanche and wanting to get Sonia. And so Blanche is going on and just like, well, okay, well, I'm going to go on and I'm going to get Dorothy. And so me and Dorothy are going to team up together against Sonia and Rose. So we. Or no, wait. Yeah. So, no, wait. We have kind of a number of people that all start to eventually go on and start to separate in teams. So that's where my confusion starts to happen. So we have Rose, who is to go on and team up with Sonia, and Blanche at one point is to team up with, I think, Blanche's other sister. And then it gets where at one point, Rose is teaming up with Dorothy, and then that falls through. And so then, once the Nelson sisters get back together after Lars's funeral, then we have it where now Rose is out of a partner because Dorothy and Blanche team up together. And so now Rosa is to have her own story in this episode where she wants to go on and fly to Italy with a guy named Augustine Bagatelli. And so we have Sophia, that is to want $1,200 to fly to Italy with this man because at some point in Sophia's past, Sophia was in Italy and had fell madly in love with this man, but it just didn't work out. And like this guy had gone on to marry another, but that woman had died. So this guy is making his way, I guess, back to America and is going to meet up with Sophia. And so we kind of have like Sophia here who is dating or who is kind of being with Augustine, and how when Sophia was to leave this table at one point, Augustine was trying to stand up when she would leave this table. Excuse me. So we go on into this story, and Sophia is desperately wanting $1,200 from Dorothy. Because I'm like, man, that seems like a lot of money to go on this plane. So I'm thinking, like, man, like, these people must be freaking rich. Or either that or, like, it seems that maybe Blanche might be rich. And, like, she must be, like, letting everybody live, like, rent free in this place that she, like, has them live in. I don't know. It is what it is with the story. So, we have a falling out between Dorothy and Sophia because Dorothy doesn't want Sophia to go on this plane because Sophia, in a term of phrase, is no spring chicken anymore. That Sophia like has all these like blood pressures and all these things, and it might not be good for her to go on a plane and fly anywhere. Okay, so what's gonna happen on the plane? I don't know. Is the pressure of being on a plane just gonna all of a sudden have her pop? I don't know. Is she a balloon that just kind of needs to be nestled? I don't know. So Sophia goes on, and she is to now have uh, this kind of bargain going on with Dorothy, that if Dorothy wins against this bowling match between Rose and Sophia against Blanche and Dorothy, Sophia's going to go on and fly to Italy with this $1,200. And if Dorothy wins, Dorothy gets, of course, this set of earrings that she's always been wanting. So we go on into this match, and so what ends up happening is now we have Blanche and we have both Rose and Sophia with the same bowling outfits on, and so we now have it where like Sophia and Rose are kind of throwing into the face of Blanche that they kind of fill out their shirts out, I guess, a little bit more than she does, and so it's like, really? So we go on and we have them starting to bowl. And so it seems like things are technically going well for these characters. So Sophia does a really interesting bowl. And so we go on, and later on in the match, we all of a sudden have Sophia that's meeting with Augustine. And so we have these two characters kind of reminiscing about old times, and that we find out that Sophia and Augustine like had shared Sophia's first kiss. And it's like, oh, that's kind of nice. So Dorothy is kind of hearing this story, and Dorothy's like, well, I can't just let my mother like lose this whole thing. So Dorothy goes on and is to just kind of like, oh, Butterfingers, and all of a sudden, like, Dorothy is to miss this one last pin, and so both Rose and Sophia win this game and get the money. And so we have it where Rose is to make this trophy, and this trophy is to have her name in a big, massive thing. and then like the other girls that are to be tied to this trophy are in much smaller print, and Dorothy is to mention that. So we have Sophia that goes on and gives Dorothy these earrings because she's like, well, hey, like you getting that one last pin, like I know you could have easily done that in your sleep. Like you threw that game for me, and I really do appreciate it. And Dorothy's like, well, yeah. So we go on, and so yeah, like we have this really nice moment, and Sophia is possibly going off to Italy, so that's great. Um, so yeah, like very interesting way to just kind of approach these episodes and so on and so forth. But I think with that said, I think I'm also just going to get out of here so I can go on and review something else for today. So I'm going to say goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. One thing that I had forgotten about, and I realized this after the fact, is we also had it where Sophia was to have that like 14-hour meal that she was making. And so like we had it where like Sophia is just kind of using like all these little things, and she's kind of sprinkling all this stuff, and she's going on and just saying like, man, like if I can just go on and make love to a meal, like this would be it. And so like as Sophia's going on and making this meal, we go on and have the girls who like are continuously talking about this whole these whole Nelson twin story. And so yeah, like we have it to where like we go all over the place with this bowling episode, where it seems that we just have like a ton of people that are kind of changing and switching and all kinds of things, and going on into just kind of being all over the place with this episode. Kind of a number of different people are kind of switching sides, and so yeah, like so that episode kind of gets a little confusing with all like the jumbled kind of things that of which that go on for all that. And it's kind of funny that both Dorothy and Blanche were supposed to face against the Nelson twins, but I guess the Nelson twins had gone on and had to go to Lars's funeral, and so I think Dorothy mentions to the girls is like, well, hey, I thought his funeral was like yesterday, and so the girls are like, oh no, like it got postponed to today. So like so yeah, like this guy like these Nelson twins aren't going to be here. And so like, oh okay. So like I guess that's we're just facing them today, because of the convenient thing of like, hey, we got to get this kind of um this bidding war kind of being done and over with. Like we had it at one point where I think Rose was talking to Blanche and saying like, well, hey, like shouldn't we have a side bet going? And Blanche is like, well, I would if I liked any of the things that you had, and if none of your stuff wasn't ugly, then yeah, I would love to go and have some side bet going. So yeah, so anything left? I think probably. I think I'm just okay or fine or good enough with putting this out. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about the Golden Girls and any number of these episodes. Maybe you have a favorite episode somewhere, and eventually maybe I will get to it at some point, or whichever. Not quite sure. We'll figure that out when we get to it. But otherwise, I'm going to go on to say goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.